What's up, dudes and dudettes? My name is Swampwater, and why is everybody dead? Yeah, it's been a bit, but just like Grandpa over here, I just keep coming back! And after watching the FNaF movie, I've been on a non-stop FNaF phase. And now that it's the 10-year anniversary of FNaF, now is a better time than ever to look back at the series, critique what didn't work, and praise what did, ranking games in worst to best form. So take off your sockies, grab your sussy mug, and let's look back at these classics in mascot horror. Oh, but hold on a second. I just want to say that there is a very likely chance that several percent of you watching will get pretty upset at this list. Every single one of these games is somebody's favorite. In fact, I've never seen a series with this many games so divisive on which games are the best. So, there is a high chance that my list will greatly differ from yours. But I hope you can all at least understand my reasonings behind liking certain games over others, even if you yourself don't quite agree with my opinions. Now, let's get started. First, we will be looking at the Subpar Games category. There's no FNaF game I dislike, but these ones are not up to snuff with the other titles in the series. At the bottom of the list, we have Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location. Now, I already hear you sprinting down to the comments to trash me, but hold on. I am almost certain that the majority of people who actually like this game, for the most part, haven't actually played this game. Because this game is so much less entertaining as a video game than it is for linear media such as YouTube. And if I were ranking games by how enjoyable they were to watch, this would be placed much higher on the list. Maybe even the top. The very gameplay helps keep the pace moving, the voice acting is stellar,
the scooper only hurts for a moment,
and the story is much more involved than it ever has been. But playing this game is outright painful. Look, here is a simulation of what it feels like to actually play Sister Location. Press the button. Wait for dialogue. Press the button. Wait for dialogue. Press. Wait for it. This part's crazy. The button. Okay, now press the vent. Now hold W. Wait for dialogue. Click over here. Ooh, danger, 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 danger. Now hold the button. I must say though, this is technically the first FNaF game to allow movement. Earlier games would only allow you to pivot your crusty swivel seat from side to side, or waddle like a constipated penguin in FNaF 4's case, but most of the game you still are restricted in your movement. Plus, the only night I would say has a fair bit of interesting gameplay is Night 2. The one where you roam below a gallery and play peekaboo with Funtime Freddy. Oh, and this section, I guess. The second half of this game is practically a chore. Night 3's Foxy segment feels like a dumbed-down variation of the idea from Night 2, and the repair minigames were done a lot better in Help Wanted, especially with how janky it is to click on Bonbon's bow tie if you don't know the intended strategy. Night 4 is no better. In fact, Night 4 I would say is the lowest of lows I have ever seen in this entire franchise. I genuinely really don't like this night. It's 3 minutes of winding and occasionally shaking, which is boring, and the last 30 seconds are such a choke point that it takes many players hours to beat it. Oh, and the game doesn't completely inform you that your input has no effect on these middle animatronics here, which makes a very simple night made even more unclear than it already is. Sure, you might be able to beat it quickly, but even with strategy guides, this night just doesn't feel clear on really anything. My first time playing, I sat there for so long, just confused why what I was doing wasn't really working. I looked at playthroughs and it looked exactly the same as what I was doing. That's just bad game design. Sadly, Night 5 isn't that much better. Sure, it isn't pig poop, but I would still much rather not play it. This keypad you must type on is needlessly hard to use, since the cursor in this game bends at the edges of the screen because why not? And if you fail, you have to sit through like a minute of dialogue and a long walking sequence that is pitch black with nothing to look at. But oh, what about bonus content? Like the secret ending in Custom Night. Well, the steps needed to access the night are a little annoying, especially since the game doesn't really tell you there's an easy way to replay the secret minigame used to unlock this secret ending, but the night itself seems pretty okay. I had a blast with the Custom Night though. Definitely underrated. Each animatronic works so well together and makes for very interesting dynamics to each challenge. For every positive velour section, there are 2 or 3 other sections which are either boring or frustrating. So how would I fix this game? Honestly, it would be kind of hard to fix the core problems of this game without changing almost all aspects about it, but I think the simplest way to improve a lot of this game's problems would be to just trim the length of dialogue and play it at the start of each minigame so there isn't as much downtime between minigames. The game also needs to be a little less hand-holdy. So much of the game, as I said, is click this, then click that, and I wish these segments were a little more interactive. Maybe make these more like small minigames rather than a simple dialogue train. Sorry, sister location enjoyers. Keep enjoying the game, but I hope you can understand my perspective on why I think it is not that good. It's not even the worst game I've ever played. I'd still rank it as a 5 out of 10. It's just definitely the weakest mainline FNaF game for me. Coming up next, the one, the only, Security Breach! I won't be ranking Ruin since I don't have nearly as much experience with it, however from the hour or so I've played of it, I have had a blast. Security Breach is so frustrating to me because I know in an alternate timeline, this game could have easily been one of, if not my favorite FNaF games. There are so many iconic and fun moments in this game, like fighting against Moon in the daycare, the laser tag battle, the absolutely towering DJ Music Man encounter, and so much more. This game completely blows Sister Location out of the water, making each section of the game interesting and fun in its own way. I also really appreciate the graphics and general layout of this game. This game looks absolutely stunning in most places. Never have I wanted to go to a location in a video game this badly before. The environment is completely stellar. So with so much to offer, why is this game so low on the list? One big topic people like to bring up with this game is its horde of bugs and glitches. And I won't deny, this game throws different bugs left, right, and center. But honestly, the glitches aren't why Security Breach is a horribly flawed game at all. The real issue is this game's lack of clarity. Without a guide, this game is a nightmare to traverse. Security Breach is a sort of open-world Metroidvania. A giant building that slowly unlocks different places as you progress through the game, and has you backtrack through past segments of the Pizzaplex to visit previously inaccessible locations. Now the layout of this map and waypoints are really well crafted, and it is really fun exploring these locations. However, the map rarely, if ever, displays useful info to the player, only ever amounting to, ooh, this blue room has access to yet another blue room! No room names, no waypoints, no nothing! But it isn't just the map that has issues, I swear, Freddy just assumes you know the entire layout of the Pizzaplex each time he directs you to a new location. Well, sorry Freddy, I don't know where security room number 2,045,000,000 is. Now 2,046,000,000, yeah, no problem. Plus, some sections of this game are just awful. Monty's route has a tremendously fun and intense boss fight and is one of the biggest highlights of the game. But there's a stupid puzzle just beforehand that doesn't ease you into its already confusing and wonky mechanics, just plops you straight in. Even with a guide, this game still has glaring flaws which keep the game from the high pedestal it really deserves. It simply just feels rushed. We never really get to see the main antagonist of this game, yet the game jumps to emotional climaxes for the character in several endings. But like, why should I care about her? At all. And speaking of endings, almost every single ending of this game is presented as a 30-ish second comic strip that honestly just never pays off at all. Thankfully, a pretty good cutscene is played for the game's most secret ending, and has a very buggy, but still great final boss that uses the FNaF Office gameplay in somewhat creative ways, utilizing the higher range of movement this game provides. But most people aren't going to achieve this ending, and will most likely only ever experience either the Leave ending, or the quote-unquote Vanny boss fight ending. Come on, make at least the main endings more satisfying. One is a slap in the face, and the other puts you in a fight against the main antagonist who you don't really know or care for, and don't even get to interact with at all in her own fight! So in honor of Security Breach missing so much potential in its story, I'm going to introduce a new villain to this video. Tarwater. This menacing and ominous figure that could be a threat to my very being. They'll definitely be prominent in this video. In conclusion, Security Breach is a game with dozens of fun sections that are spread across a vast, beautiful open world in a unique setting, encouraging exploration at every chance it can. The setup for an 11 out of 10 game that rivals even the best of open worlds out there. But it is completely butchered by beyond frustrating navigation and poor execution in its biggest moments. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy this game, but no other FNaF game has gotten me this frustrated before. 6.5 out of 10. But I know what y'all are thinking. What would content creator Minaxa say? Well, I have a surprise for you. Dudes and dudettes, give a round of applause for Minaxa!
Oh, thank you for summoning me. I actually have a ton of thoughts on this game.
Now that you are here, it is time to see what would Minaxa say?
So I think Security Breach is a very divisive game because it was the—
Wow, that was a ton to unpack. Thanks to you, I now have such a deeper understanding of this game. Now that that's done, it's time for the fine games, which is pretty self-explanatory. Waddling to the next spot on this list is FNaF 4. This game is easily the most terrifying FNaF game, maybe even more than Help Wanted in VR mode. This game forces you to make decisions consistently that, if you fail, get you a big ol' smooch from Chica. Each time you approach a door, you have to listen for quiet breathing in your ear, then shut the door. Otherwise, flash the hallway. I think a lot of people find the idea of forcing you to listen for quiet sounds only to scream into your eardrum to be a cheap way to scare the player, but honestly I think it was pretty clever. Plus, the entire game has ambiance that matches FNaF 1. This place is the definition of uncomfortable. So many sounds and visuals generate an eerie feel throughout the game. The once nice chimes from prior FNaF games are now recontextualized as this horrifying background noise that makes you want to shit your pants. But just because a game fills diapers doesn't mean it's fun to play, and this game for me just gets a little tiring after a while. The entire game feels a little slow, which is weird because you consistently must be moving in order to pass later nights, and it's not even like this game is too simple, because most FNaF games boil down to a simple rhythm once you reach later nights anyway. The main issue I think with the game is it's just not very varied. Despite FNaF 4 replicating the mechanics of FNaF 1, FNaF 4 in a way feels very linear. Chica and Bonnie both move down a straight path with only one detour being the kitchen. Freddy is just a simple timer, and although I don't think this game would benefit from cameras, that was a big mechanic from FNaF 1 that is completely removed from this game. So, how do we fix this quote-unquote linear problem? Well, it's a little tough when FNaF 4 is so tightly woven to the mechanics of FNaF 1, and I don't think adding more rooms would really work well to FNaF 4's unique mechanics. So the two options I see are to add depth to the animatronic AI, or add new animatronics entirely. Adding new animatronics entirely would break away from FNaF 4, being less of a remix of FNaF 1, and could even tamper with the ambiance FNaF 4 brings, but I think both options would help the game. If you have any suggestions on how animatronics or mechanics could enhance the animatronic AI, I would love to hear them in the comments below. In between each night, you will encounter a plush trap minigame, on top of the standard midnight segments this series had since the second game. Winning the minigame allows you to start the following night at 2 AM instead of 12, which is pretty cool. But losing once completely removes your bonus, which in my opinion is kinda dumb. What's the point of winning this minigame if the only benefit you can get out of it is if you beat the next night on your first try? I would honestly just let players keep their bonus, or at least part of their bonus, like letting them start at 1 AM instead of 12 AM on following attempts. But wow, these midnight segments are a step up from any other FNaF game we've had so far. These are the best they've ever been. FNaF 2 and 3 were mostly consistent, featuring little changes between nights, just a ooh and an ah. But FNaF 4 shows a different day in the life of our protagonist with each following night, which interestingly FNaF 5 suggests is all taking place around the FNaF 4 location, which is really interesting. I don't think I would change much about these segments other than maybe include more music. This Fredbear laughing ambiance gets a little annoying after a while, especially since some of these segments are several minutes long. The last thing I'd like to mention about FNAF 4 is the lore! I'm gonna be honest, this game was when the FNAF lore went from being vague to just being convoluted. One of the popular theories this game had back when it came out was the dream theory, that everything was a dream. And honestly, I do think that was the original idea Scott was going for, until everyone called it stupid and it was likely retconned. A lot of the problems with the FNAF 4 story likely started because of this game, but honestly, looking back at this game, it holds up pretty well. 7 out of 10. But, say it with me now.
And that proves definitively why Security reached the game is actually Gregory's father, which is exactly the direction I believe the series needs to follow in order to reach a satisfying conclusion.
That's great, but what about FNAF 4? That's when the series really became experimental. I'm sure you have a bunch to say about it.
Oh, FNAF 4? Well, personally, I really like FNAF 4. In my opinion, it...
Fading into view is FNAF 3, the last of the original trilogy of FNAF games. If you completely ignore over 70% of the following series of games, probably closer to 90 if you count the movie, books, and Orville the Elephant. I used to hate this game. Now I just want to drown it in water and set it on fire. Oh, I guess that part was taken care of. The idea of the main and only antagonist of this game being the killer, also known as Purple Guy, is pretty cool. Although, I do wish you knew this guy was the killer a lot sooner, because you kinda just assume it's another weird furry robot like the rest of them have been. This is the guy, but on a blind playthrough you just don't know that. I do like the reveal of how he died, but I think they could have showed this was the Purple Guy without detracting much from the final sequence. I also really love the design of the horror attraction. It's essentially a walkthrough to your office, which complements a lot of the gameplay in this game. You get to see how far down the horror attraction he has reached, and you never fully feel safe, even if he's at the far end of the building, thanks to the vent shafts, which are everywhere in this building. Springtrap is always at most just a few moments away from your office. This game features hidden minigames with secret endings presented in an ARG fashion, encouraging players to collaborate in unraveling its mysteries. And unlike future entries, this game was actually clear with its lore. Once you completed all the hidden minigames in the secret way, a good ending is presented to the player that shows the original souls, excluding what seems to be Golden Freddy, finally set free. You've given them the birthday that was stolen from them. You let their souls rest. Scott sadly didn't confirm whether this ending was canon in the Doco interview he was in, but future games don't seem to feature animatronics possessed by the original children, so I'd like to think this is the canon ending. But of course, we gotta talk about how bad the jump scares are in this game. Way too abundant, numbing you to the scary. And then Springtrap just simply walks up to you like you're a dazed customer walking to a fast food counter ready to order a Filet-O-Piss.
Now available for $7.99 at your local McDonald's.
Away from the big critiques though, I simply think the gameplay of FNAF 3 seems to try to add a lot more strategic elements into the game without fully fleshing out on them. Not a big critique, since although it's shallow, it's still good, but let's try to delve into this more. You know how I mentioned earlier how FNAF games are often rhythmic by nature? That it's a lot about finding that perfect strategy that checks all the boxes you need to do? I found FNAF 3 tried to explore more into the real-time strategy potential this series has, by giving multiple options for rebooting systems, and pros and cons to putting Springtrap in each camera of the building. I do like how the cameras require you to play differently depending on where Springtrap is located, but the strategy for repairing boils down to simply clicking reboot all when 2 or more systems are down, which is kinda boring. Offering a choice between quick fixes or longer ones would add a significant amount of depth. For example, if Springtrap is in an open vent, you might opt to do a quick fix on your camera view, sacrificing long-term stability for immediate action. I love how each camera has its pros and cons. However, cameras with vent shafts all lead to one destination, beside or inside your office. And if you close the vents, then Springtrap returns to the camera he was last in. This causes each camera to feel more samey in my opinion, than if the vents led to different places. Like for example, if the vent was closed, Springtrap can choose to go to the previous camera or take an alternate route. Now, Springtrap is less predictable, meaning the game can rely less on distracting jump scares. Cameras now feel more varied, but not closing the correct vent still lets Grandpa drag his multi-decade-old corpse down to you. Wait a second. If the good ending is canon, how'd the guard manage to figure out all this ARG BS on his first go? I guess we'll never know. 7 out of 10. Alright, now these games are getting really good. Although I think every FNaF game has its major flaws, these games get really, really good from this point and onwards.
Uh-oh, how unfortunate. Uh-oh, how unfortunate. We've reached the point of lots of blight, and the game that's from is Ultimate Custom Night.
Before you say anything, yes, this game is not all that scary. It's barely even its own game, but hear me out. Ultimate Custom Night is simply just fun. The gameplay loop pushes you to keep adding more and more animatronics to each night so you can push your high score higher and higher, essentially letting you foster your own difficulty curve. That in itself makes this game a treat to play, but also different cutscenes and office designs are rewarded once you reach certain progress levels, which always encourages you to keep pushing yourself further if having a higher high score isn't enough to motivate you. I also love how this game complements the ending of FNaF 6, almost in an epilogue way, where we get to see the POV of William Afton suffering an eternity in purgatory. I think it is sensible why this game is the most praised FNaF title on Steam as of writing this, but who knows, maybe Help 1 or 2 will demolish that. But this game isn't without its flaws. In fact, there are plenty. The depth each animatronic has is like paper thin, essentially all being simple timers that punish you when you forget to check up on them, which makes all the animatronics kinda clumped together. Part of the reason I assume the animatronics are so shallow is because if the animatronics were too dynamic or complex, then it would be too difficult to maintain a high count of animatronics at once, meaning people wouldn't be doing runs of so many animatronics in one go. But also, I think it's due to the fact that this game takes place in the FNaF 1 location, which can't really hold 50 mechanically interesting animatronics at once. I think the solution for this is to just make one big location, meshing all the locations together into one. I mean, it's all a nightmare anyway, so it doesn't have to make sense. I also wish more animatronics behaved like how they did in their respective games, specifically the more mechanically interesting ones. Some stay the same or at least similar like Toy Bonnie / Chica and Ballora, but then there's animatronics like Springtrap who just crawl through the vents like a bunch of the other animatronics do. Springtrap's audio lure mechanics were so iconic in FNaF 3, but now his lust for the vents has gotten so extreme that the mechanic that defined him is no longer here. Now that's a party. It's a vent party, a party with vents, Springtrap and all of the fun. Wow, wow. It's a vent party with all our friends. It's like a party in the vents, it's what it's like. And that's lame. Finally, why is like half of the cast of characters from FNaF 6? I mean, we can't go without Orville, but why is Ned Bear here? Why did he get in here but Funtime Freddy didn't? Nor Nightmare Foxy or Withered Freddy. What? Ned, who'd you talk to get in this game? If you can get in, can I? 7.5 out of 10. Winding up to the next spot of this list is FNaF 2. FNaF 2 is essentially just UCM, but a bit scarier. Lots of animatronics, check. Fast gameplay, check. Shallow animatronics, check. There's a child locked in my basement, check.
Wait, what?
I'm kidding.
Oh, thank God.
FNaF 2 isn't a lot like UCN at all.
What?
FNaF 2 is probably the game I see the highest on most people's tier list, and although I don't really agree it's by far the best, it's definitely a great game. This was the introduction of secret minigames, the core lore that the entire series sits upon, and improved the pacing off of FNaF 1 tremendously. Other than keeping things fresh, I don't really know what the point of the mask mechanic was. Managing door power and shutting the correct door is much more interesting than plopping on a mask, but to counter that, FNaF 2 is super zoomy. The later nights of this game are merciless, and sadly the game pushes you into doing a very repetitive strategy, but I think it's still pretty fun. The only thing I'd really change is make the camera system a little more useful, but other than that, this game is FNaF on steroids, and I love it. 7.5 out of 10. And now we are in the best of the best. The ones that for me did so much right and are exactly what I want to see from FNaF titles. Wow, such an unsuspecting game. Just a simple arcade experience. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, aka FNaF 6, is the final game in the original story. I really just can't do this game justice without its own video, but there is a lot to love. It has a creepy atmosphere like FNaF 1 and 4 did, it's strategic like 3 especially was, allowing multiple ways to defend yourself against the animatronics, with you being forced to choose what's best in the current situation. It perfectly ties loose ends in the story, it forces you to stay on your toes and be active just like FNaF 2 and UCN, it forces you to put yourself into dangerous situations like FNaF 4, and partially with FNaF 3. It's full of choice and customization, even allowing you to slowly build up difficulty at your own pace like UCN did. Multiple endings like FNaF 3 and 5. This game checks off so many boxes. There are 3 segments of this game. The Tycoon segment, the Office segment, which we know FNaF 4 the most, and the Salvage segment, which is lots of variety for one FNaF game. It's so fun building your own pizzeria, thinking what's best for it and simply what just looks nicest. My main complaint with this section is simply that I want even more. Let me customize the wallpaper, give me more decorations to buy. This segment is great, and the only way to improve it is just have more of it. The Office gameplay no longer has the 12 to 6 AM mechanic like every single other game. You are now forced to do long, risky tasks in order to progress, forcing you to put yourself into danger. Once again, you have various tools which are all very useful in their own ways in defending against the animatronics, which allows for lots of real-time strategy. And there's even upgrades you can buy to make harder nights easier as long as you're making money from the Tycoon segment, which ties the 2 modes neatly together. This game is a blend of all the best aspects from earlier games and adds so much to fully realize the potential this series has. Also, another thing tying the Office and Tycoon sections together is these ads that play if you decide to earn extra sponsorship deals in the Tycoon gameplay. These ads can really screw you over and are a nice addition of choice and connection between the 2 modes. Oh, also depending on how well you buy and place things around the pizzeria can affect if your Office gameplay gets more interesting. But wait, there's still one more segment we need to talk about, and that's the Salvage segment. This one works one-on-one with the Office segment. Without the Salvage segment, there really wouldn't be much activity in the Office segment. The mode asks if you would like to salvage an animatronic or dump it. Salvaging is important for making money in the Tycoon segment, and is necessary for getting the good ending, but also allows for lots of difficulty choosing for the player, allowing them to replay the game repeatedly until they are ready to salvage each animatronic in one run to get the good ending. These sections aren't too hard, just listen for the sounds coming from the animatronic, or watch if they move, and boom, you're golden. But even such a perfect game like this one isn't completely free from criticism. Animatronics all play very similarly to each other, mechanics aren't explained as best as they could be, and you never really get to see the animatronics outside of the salvage mode and in jump scares. And I really wish they bring back the camera somehow. I missed them cameras. I also wish there was a meter showing your noise level to make it more clear how much danger you are, but other than that, this is practically a flawless game, and is heavily underrated in the FNaF series. Not to mention the badass ending this game has. Oh my god. 9 out of 10. Looking up and all around in the next spot is FNaF Help Wanted. Playing this in flat mode, this game is a solid 6 at best, but in VR, man, this game is good. The atmosphere of each game is perfectly represented in this game. It really feels like you're in these locations. On top of that, since these games feel like they were built perfectly for VR, the games work amazingly. And even with small things that didn't quite work, like the monitor flipping mechanic from every FNaF game with a monitor, it was easily tweaked and rebalanced to allow for no camera flipping at all while still working very nicely. FNaF 1 was easily translated to VR, and honestly, FNaF 3 is better in this game than in the original in many ways. FNaF 2, however, was downgraded quite a lot, and feels even more repetitive than the original. But this game isn't just a VR mashup of the first 3 games, there's a lot of other stuff here too. There are these awesome repair minigames which take the concept from sister location and flesh them out a lot further. There are the vent repair games which are pretty awesome. There's this. and this is okay. And although FNaF 4 and 5 isn't represented completely in this game, there's also lots of tokens to collect to unlock various toys and gadgets, which I didn't really do a whole ton, but it's cool how it's here. And there's also these tapes that give really interesting lore when they feel like it. Also, this game really puts into perspective how tall these things are. Freddy looks like he could crush me with just his pinky finger. 9 out of 10. Messing with the fabric of reality is FNaF Help Wanted 2. People told me this game was not nearly as scary as Help Wanted 1, but the piss in my shorts says otherwise. Every time I play this game, somebody keeps pissing my pants, and don't worry, I will find the culprit. I was really surprised when people told me this game would only feature segments from Sister Location and complete unique missions, some being within the Security Breach location. I know Help Wanted 1 had several unique missions too, but to me, the reason for Help Wanted's existence was to feed people's desire to experience the classic FNaF games in VR. And seeing as I clearly am not a big fan of Sister Location's gameplay, I was curious but skeptical of this entry. But after playing Help Wanted 2 myself, I was pleasantly surprised. Scare-wise, there's a diverse range of missions you can pick from. To my knowledge, you can get jump scared in all of these games, but some are less pressuring than others, and I really love that. But I'd be lying if I said this game was not as scary as the first game. There's plenty of terrifying missions you can play. If you thought DJ Music Man was huge in Security Breach, well, you're gonna get a pretty horrible surprise once you play this game. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! I don't blame Past Me for even a second getting this shocked. Wait, maybe I was the culprit for the pants piss case all along. No, I must keep searching. And not gonna lie, this game's missions on average are even more fun than even the best missions from the first game. The shooting gallery is very fast-paced, these delivery missions ignite the Papa Louie player from within me, Bonkabon is the best whack-a-mole game I've ever played, not just in VR, in general. And even the Foxy Target game is back from the first game's DLC. This game prioritizes fun, whilst being a very scary game depending on which missions you choose. Sister Location also got a massive upgrade in this game. There wasn't as much Sister Location content as I expected, but everything they included was done pretty well. They didn't just recreate these sections of the game in VR, but also changed and added mechanics which flesh out these sections a whole lot more than the original did. But this game still isn't free from criticism. Help Wanted 1 didn't have the greatest of tutorials, but this game is even worse. In Blur Gallery, they tell you to avoid the mini arenas, but despite trying to avoid them, I died every single time. The game failed to explain to me that you need to toss the mini away when you approach them! In Cold Storage, at one point you are quickly alarmed of two things at once, and I found everything went too fast for me to focus on what I was meant to do. Deaths like these feel really unfair and soured those missions for me a decent bit. The flat mode that recently came out for this game is leagues better than the one for the first game. The flat mode of the first game sucks! Admittedly, they did do lots to try to make these controls work. They added shortcuts to do certain actions, as well as create new selectables to automatically do things you can't easily do outside of VR, which is far better than nothing. But Help Wanted 2's flat mode is legitimately on par with the VR version, with controls that take advantage of the strengths of mouse and keyboard. They made unique menus and UI, you can walk around the hub world, missions like the shooting gallery allow you to select your weapon with the scroll wheel, and more. I had low expectations for this flat mode, but if you don't own a VR headset, you don't need to for the full experience of this game. This game is just as good in the flat version as the VR one. Hey! Pig Patch! It was you, wasn't it? Shoo! At first I thought this game was going to be much lower on the list, but this has become one of my favorite FNaF entries. 9.5 out of 10. Wonderful job. And finally, at the top of the list, we have, drumroll please, Freddy, how are you drum rolling without your arms? Silly you. Anyways, at the top of the list, we have Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Yes, say all you want. Early nights especially are incredibly slow, and content-wise the game is lacking. But this game does one thing leagues better than any other entry in the series. This game is genuinely a nightmare scenario. Claustrophobic, cold, desolate. The game plays random sounds to taunt you. Weird appearances on the monitors make you question any remaining safety you feel. Phone guide progressively transitions from a guide and tutorial
there are blind spots in your camera view.
to yet another thing against you.
Hey, listen, I had an idea. Try playing dead. Yeah, never mind. Scratch that.
And finally, your only source of protection is a power-hungry door and a power-dry building. Oh yeah, and a dingy light that feels just as reliable as putting duct tape over an amputated limb. Scott really took that comment against his character design seriously and decided to go so hard on his next project. This game turns the dial to 11 in its presentation. And the game isn't even that complicated. The mechanics are simple to grasp and easy to understand. And the animatronics all have their own characteristics that work well with the gameplay. Finally, I want to mention one more thing this game loves to do to taunt you. When you fail to keep the lights on, instead of just killing you, this game makes the excellent decision to give you hope. Freddy sings his little lullaby as you pray you have enough time alive to reach 6 AM and win the night. You are completely at Freddy's mercy. Completely luck-based, but I mean, hey, if you don't like your fate being put up to chance, just don't let the lights go out. This game is phenomenal. 10 out of 10. And I hope future FNaF games will never stray away from being eerie nightmare scenarios with a twisted story about tragedy and having an immersive atmosphere. I grew up with this franchise. Ever since the first game, I was always eager for whatever Anim Dude was crafting. This series has a special place in my heart, and I'm sure a ton of people watching this video are in the same boat. I really love to read the comments of my videos. If you have your own opinions or thoughts on certain games, feel free to comment them down below and cause a discussion. Happy 10-year anniversary, FNaF! Here's your trophy! Don't touch it, it's toxic. Now before we wrap up, for bonus videos releasing alongside this one, head to my second channel. And for updates on future videos, check my Discord server in the description. And if we hit 10,000 likes on this video and 40,000 subscribers, I will release a part 2, where I rank each individual level in Help Wanted 1 and 2. Finally, I think it's important to ask. What would Manaxas say?
And five Freddy. FNaF 4.
Were you talking about FNaF 4 this entire time?
Well, yeah, I had to let them know.
Wait. What did they have to know? Answer me! Answer me!
You, viewer, look behind you.
Anyways, now I think I'm long past due making these videos, so let's get that done. To everyone watching, have an amazing day. Adios.